Hello, everybody. My name is Tim Wright. I am the designer and creator of GnosticTarotCards.com. Today, I wanted to share with you, uh, as part of the precursor and preparation to my trip to the United Kingdom, England, actually London, to the Tate Museum in Britain for the William Blake exhibition. I wanted to share with you the tarot and a little bit about William Blake tarot, and also to share with you a little bit about the initiatic ideas that go behind the William Blake tarot. So I'm going to go ahead and play the video for you, but you can go on blaketarot.com and see the slideshow of what the cards look like. So that was a small slideshow of the William Blake tarot. And the reason why I wanted to show that is because looking at the images, though powerful, they're cryptic and you don't really know what you're looking at. I mean, sure, there's a word there, or maybe it brings to expression what's going on. But for instance, right now, we're looking at the picture, which is a representation of a term called Albion. And we're not talking about though it may have a little bit of a reference to it, the British idea of Albion as a city of enlightened individuals that go and live out this non-serf-like residence that we see in things like Merlin and the Grail mysteries. But Albion was a specific term that Blake used. Um, and it was really important. However, by looking at this card, you're not going to know what Albion is. You're not going to know what it meant, and not going to know the context to put it in. So what I also wanted to present was I came across recently one of the books that I wanted to let you know about. It's called A Blake Dictionary by S. Foster Gaiman. This is an amazing book. This book is by a Blake scholar who went through Blake's iconography and literature and actually found a way to present in explanatory form, basically, definitions of what Blake is saying in his mytho poetical language. Because, it's one thing to know Shakespeare and Hamlet and some of the words that go along with the play. It's another thing to know the cultural background, but that these words are mythopoetic signifiers that signify something else. And that's why we're talking about this today. Along with that, when I was at Half Price Books and preparing for my trip, I picked up a complete works of William Blake poetry and prose book, which is edited by Erdman, and there's a commentary by Bloom. Now, this is a book of 950 some odd pages, so you don't have to read cover to cover to be able to understand what Albion is. But for instance, when you're reading through this, I mean, there's multiple contents, but to talk about Albion, you'll want to go to Blake's books about Milton. Now, Milton, most people won't know this, but with the Blake Dictionary, you'll find out. Milton is about the cosmic being that comes down from the cosmos into the land of earthly material realm and doesn't lose knowledge of his cosmic heritage. This sounds a lot like the legend of the pearl in Gnostic Nag Hammadi language. And it's basically what happens is when you come down into material form, into your form and existence as a human in life, do you remember the attributes that came with you of the spirit of the realm of the cosmos? And that's what Albion is supposed to represent. And Milton's first book, which I'm not a genius on Blake, so please correct me in comments if I'm wrong, but Milton's first book is about Albion coming down from the cosmos into material. The next part is really good for our age, and it's about Albion as a gender bent male finding his inner divine feminine through the interaction of the four Zoas. So we're immediately looking at some language which is like, what in the world is going on here? If you weren't knowledgeable enough about spiritual and occult systems of knowledge, you wouldn't know how important a figure like Albion is. Now, there's a lot more than meets the eye. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about what Damon says Albion is. This is so important to get this book, too. I mean, this goes through a lot of the references of when he was talked about, but it talks about some of the historical, but then we get to the mythopoetical meaning of Albion. Blake had come to believe that fallen man is sleeping with his faded head laid down on the rock of eternity, where the eternal lion and eagle remain to devour. He gave the name Albion to the hitherto nameless eternal man or fallen man. So when you look at this, do you think, oh yeah, this is a glorious form of fallen man and materialism that has realized the four Zoas? No, you don't. You go, huh? There's a naked dancer, hold me close, young tiny dancer kind of thing, or whatever. You look at the picture, and this is exactly what Damon says. It was separated from the explanations and literature that goes beyond it. There was a group of people who said, oh, the pictures and the mysticism and the magical atmosphere of imagination and looking at pictures, that's all we need. And then there was another group that was like, no, we don't need any pictures in our life. All we need is a bunch of explanations, words, definitions, concepts, and we'll be able to do what needs to be done. However, that is not the case. The mythopoetical structure of William Blake cannot exist without the other hand. One hand doesn't exist without the other. And it's important we talk about the hands of Albion, because in Blake, there, even when at the, for instance, at the website, you're going to read before you go into the exhibition that there's violent and sometimes sexually, pretty much deviating imagery that you're going to see at the Blake exhibition. Now, this is very important to realize. However, most people don't have enough familiarity with the systems to know that Blake, and here we're going to go into a deep dive. Blake was part of the Moravian Society, and Moravians weren't just orgiastic sex cult like a lot of people depict them. What they were doing was they were bringing a a sacrament basically into the most taboo and most unknown realm of human behavior, which was sexual practice. So Blake was part of this Moravian society, and the Moravians were headed, or at least inspired by Dr. Falk. As you'll read in Marcia Schuchart's book, which I have here, William Blake's Sexual Path of Spiritual Vision, you'll start to see that, wait a minute, this wasn't just a deviant group of people. Blake reached people like Yeats in the 18th, 19th century, and Blake was even used by people such as Jung. Edinger utilized Blake's imagery in the commentary of individuation, in the process that Job comes and starts to understand what God is. And this is very important. There's a reason why I'm giving all this background information, because Dr. Jonas Falk was known as the Baal Shem Tov of London, the master of the name. And Falk's method of spirituality was Kabbalah. But again, it was not Kabbalah like we know of in the modern theosophic Kabbalah that you read about the spheres and the language of the Simsum through Lurianic Kabbalah, or even Rosicrucian Kabbalah of this imagery and learning how to embrace these images so we can start to diagram our inner mandala of elemental attributions. That's really what a lot of the Rosicrucians were doing. They had mandalic representations of these modes of the human being, what Steiner started to call the thinking, the feeling, and the willing. But see, that threefold basis was not what Albion is about. Albion is a fourfold being. This is very, very important, because the fourfold being integrates the hidden aspect of the human being. And the quaternary, which Jung started to explain to us in the book Ion, he gave a diagram of all of the needed areas, which my teacher, Christine Payne-Towler, started to show me. It's pretty complicated, so I don't want to get it. But there's a diagram in Ion that has 16 areas, and is once A knows itself through A, B, C, and D, then it can learn B. And B can learn itself not only through the knowledge of A, B, C, and D of A, but B's A, B, C, and D. So now for E to learn itself, it has to know these rounded areas in each segment of the mandala. Very important. In Blake's dictionary, they give a palace. And I don't know if people know this stuff or if they just stumble upon it, not knowing about it. I'm trying to find you guys the palace that shows. It's very important. But like I said, if you don't have this dictionary, you're not going to know what was being talked about. Things like, Blake was well known within the I believe 17th century, and so Blake was not even around. Our psychology was not even around at the time of William Blake. However, William Blake somehow, in some way, knew the secret integrative language of psychoanalytic information that Jung found through his process of unconscious experimentation in the Black Books, which of course are going to be released in June of this year. For all those that want them, I'll be giving a small review of them. But the Blake, there was nothing known as modern psychology. What was going on was there was an initiatic vibe, a current of information that was going on beneath the surface that the Moravians had tapped into through Jonas Falk. And Falk was known as a Sabbatean. There's a form of Kabbalah which is completely about integrating the portion of us that's been blocked off, and what Jung started to show as a fourfold quaternary being, that There is no such thing as a threefold being. We are fourfold beings. So as you start to integrate this hidden area, this is what Blake called Satan. Satan was the cast off side of our humanity that was not convenient for social, economic, and uh, personal psychological reasons. But this was a part of our psyche. And so the four Zoas is about the integration of the fourth factor, whatever that is for you. And it's a profound thing. In fact, Dr. June Singer wrote about Blake's mythopoetic structure and how important it was to the individuation process. In a book around here somewhere, I got it. It's like called The Devil's Dictionary or The Devil's Bible or something like that. Because Blake was seen on face value as a really dark figure, but he wasn't a dark figure. He was absolutely enlightened. But to get back to the point of Albion, I know this is around and around and around. Albion was the name of the fallen man. And where do we start to learn about the fallen man and the four elements? We start to learn about that through Swedenborgianism. Swedenborg brought forth an illuminism that was started Gnostic groups and circles, but it wasn't well known. This is because the Protestant Reformation and the Catholic systems of worship wouldn't allow any kind of reincarnation. Not only would they not allow reincarnation, they wouldn't allow any kind of individual uh, self self fulfilling way of doing a spiritual path. In Greek mystical language, it's called the anodos, the upward path. They wouldn't allow the upward path. You were only allowed to go to the upward path, the way, through Jesus Christ. You weren't able to do the upward path on your own work and research and viewpoints and study, as Daskalos calls it. You weren't allowed to study. Everything was studied for you. All you were there to do was to believe and to worship and to follow the dogmatic stuff that was being given to you, either through church doctors or through the Bible. And that's all you needed to do to have a happy life, because there was no reincarnation. You don't have a continuity of consciousness. There is no issues other than your own behavior and conformity of that behavior to acceptable standards. So it was a very limited, very broken way of practicing spirituality. Now, I'm not going to go into Jung's criticism, but Blake did do these representations of Job as Job was going through these trials of learning and understanding what exactly is going on. So back to Sabbateanism. Sabbateanism was about, as I learned through some modern followers of Zevi Sabbate's teachings, and I forget their name, but you can find them on the internet if you're interested. I'm sure they'll reveal themselves. Donme as their name, Donmeh. They were doing what was called the left-hand path, but it's not the orgiastic, super like reptilian David Icke kind of stuff you hear about for the left-hand path and Satanism. What the left-hand path really is integrating that part of ourselves which has been blocked off, letting all of the pillars stand in the temple of Albion, and letting those pillars all become equally represented in the process. This is the great reintegration, kind of. I mean, there's a lot more technicalities to it, but we're reintegrating those portions of us which have been lost prior to the revelation and experience of this initiatic path. So Albion is the cosmic being that's talked about in Milton as it comes down and it remembers It remembers its attributes. It doesn't forget them. It doesn't give up its attributes, but to become material, you have to become somewhat forgetting of them. So, I mean, Blake talks about uh, Arusia, I think is the name, and on and on and on. You'll read it in the Blake dictionary. So don't take my word for it. This is a Blake scholar, the scholar S. Foster Damon really nails this stuff when he says that the words were separated from the image. So we weren't able to connect them together until people like Damon came by and started to reintegrate what is the systems of thinking that these images are represented by. And now we can start to get a Venn diagram of exactly in the Vesica, exactly what is happening here. And this falls into Steiner's modality that if you learn words and you learn concepts too early, a portion of you starves. And that portion of you is the portion that knows these images without it being defined to you. But it's not it can't be learned later in life after you take on this word and speech basic modality and exclusion to the others. So this is kind of the process that happens in integration. You start to integrate these deep, dark energies that have not been unlocked. Sometimes multi-generationally, they're epigenetic psychological issues that human beings aren't willing to look at. And so this is what Blake was looking at. He was like, hey, this Satan being is not some dark, deep craziness that's going to erode your life and turn you into this reptile being. The Satan is actually this locked away energy that, when released, will allow the being to become awakened. And that's just not popular language in the Protestant churches, and definitely not in Catholic catechism. So, uh, in Blake's work, he even says things that are really just anti-cultural and things like "Hail Satan," and it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. The Jesus freaks will freak out about that, but Blake wasn't saying that to mean what other people meant by that. He meant what he meant by that. And what he meant by that was typical of, hail the unconscious. The unconscious is now able to give us the power that we have never had in all of our trails. And Albion comes down into material form to show us, hey, wait a minute, there's four Zoas here. You're not going to be able to go with just the threefold emanation. And, on and on and on. You'll read this language, especially in Milton. I don't know, Milton is really good. But so that is a little bit about William Blake, the Blake Tarot, which I will be buying. I will be in London seeing the Britain exhibit of Blake at the Tate Museum. And I'll come back, like I said, with a book of the exhibition so I can show everyone what it was showing there, because this is a once-in-a-lifetime art exhibit. So if you've gone, great, leave a comment, talk about your experience. If not, then, hopefully something like this will be in your radar for the future. So may Albion rise and all, and with that, goodbye.